In today's economy, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's almost impossible to even think about creating a financial strategy or saving money. On today's show, we are going to discuss how your money and lack of financial planning can have an overall effect on your health and well-being. Hi, welcome to Health Journeys, a podcast about real human experiences in health and medicine. I am your host and healthcare advocate, Maritza Hasty. Health Journeys is all about discussing the diagnosis and treatments of diseases and exploring personal stories in pursuit of overall health and well-being from different points of view. Support for this podcast comes from Hasty Storytelling. Hasty Storytelling is a creative agency that specializes in production, brand strategy, and live streaming solutions. For more information, visit us at hastystorytelling.com. Hi everyone, welcome to Health Journeys. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the importance of financial planning and how your money can actually have an overall effect on your health and well-being. Joining us today is Lidia Cortes. She's a financial planner who's going to offer some important advice on how to create a strategy, not only for yourself, but for your family, regardless of your age or income. Hi, Lidia. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much. Excited and happy to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you because this is very important information. But let's start so my listeners can know a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background. So tell us about yourself and how you got into this field and doing the work that you do.
Absolutely. So I actually have been in the field probably within I want to say almost about a decade or so. I started very slowly inside an insurance office, worked my way up as a receptionist, and then eventually managing the entire office for over 8 years. So I've maintained myself in the industry when it came to that, working closely with real estate agents, different mortgage lenders as well. And so now ventured directly and just focusing more on the financial planning of things. So always just overall the well-being of the household, that's important, and the proper protection that you must have.
So when did you actually start focusing on the financial planning aspect with all of this experience that you have in your background?
That I want to say I did about a year ago. That's when I started. I had the opportunity come, and more than anything was the need that I saw where, you know what, there's so many people out there that are hurting from not knowing what they don't know. And that in itself, just the financial literacy and the difference and the impact that it can do on a positive side to the household once they do. And importantly, also just realizing there's not enough of us in the Hispanic or the Latin community that are out here willing to go and make that voice for them. And so I decided, I'm going to make that difference in not just my home, but my community. And that's where my passion comes.
Wonderful. So when you first made that switch from, as you said, your background in real estate and other areas, what were some of the immediate challenges that you faced right off the bat?
I realized how much everyone is very comfortable in insuring their phones, their home, their auto, but not their own life. And they're not very open and comfortable in actually having the conversation on financial planning or just finance in general. And so definitely that was one of the things that I just thought, why are we not talking about these things? Why aren't we actually going and thinking of the future and proper protection and making sure there's a will and a trust and an estate? There's already these things that we're implementing. And are we leaving it behind just simply because it's not enforced? But then we have to go back and think of, well, your cell phone doesn't require to have the insurance, but yet we're so willing to insure our home and our cell phone, but not our own lives. And so that's more than anything where I realized, okay, there's that need of a change, and there's not enough of us having this conversation. We need to start speaking up and having this conversation.
Are you seeing any type of a shift from when you first began and saw that challenge to where you are today?
Absolutely. Yes. So more than anything now, one of the things that I'm very passionate in doing is actually coming out into the community and helping not just the Latin community and then just everyone in general as far as this small community that we are in, but empowering the women too. It's a very male dominant industry, but you're able to actually still lead the way and empower them in educating. More than anything, that's where I strive into the education and providing them how to move around in an industry that's so male dominant, but how also finances impact us on a general basis, regardless of the industry that we're in. And then also for the younger generation, I had the opportunity growing up in my 20s to have, did I just age myself? I just did. But I had the opportunity to actually have mentors along the way in different aspects and areas of my life. And so for me now, it's like, okay, I know the difference and the impact that it had in my life positively. And now it's up to me to actually go out there and do the same. And so that's one of the things that I've realized, people are open to it if you go about it and they come and say, they're more open to it if they know that you care, rather than you just going and giving them the information. They're always going to walk away with, okay, this person actually genuinely cares for me and my family and my future, rather than just anybody can come and just put a pamphlet in front of you and say, okay, these are the next steps, and just hope that you actually do something about it. And so that's where the shift comes. That's where you're starting to see now, and especially with everything that's going on today, people are more open to actually listen because they're living it. Unfortunately, there's not enough people that had this opportunity and have someone actually sit down with them and implement and help them and understand the importance of something as small as an emergency fund. And so
Agreed.
in the place that where we're at right now, so many families are out there suffering because they didn't have anything in place.
Right.
And so thankfully, God has placed me in a position where I'm able to actually give them that vehicle and give them the education, and then come in and provide that. Everything that I do, all the services are complimentary. We do a financial needs analysis, and that is basically a GPS roadmap to help the family reach their goals, and whatever it may be, whether it's eliminating debt, or striving to buy a new home, or wherever the case that the family is at, we meet them and we're able to do the service on that. And so that's more than anything, that's the passion. That's where I find the happiness in being able to provide a service, because you are able to see hope being brought back into the lives of people that thought maybe they didn't have the opportunity to protect themselves or learn this information or even retire.
So you really gave us a big chunk of information there. So what I'd like to do is I kind of want to maybe break it down a little bit. So, I mean, everything that you said was great, but I just kind of want our listeners to kind of maybe take it step by step. So let me take you back a little bit. Let's talk about at what age do you think it's important to start learning about financial planning? Where do you see, if you could design or create a program, at what age would you say that it would be the best age to start having these discussions?
I honestly think that at a very young age, even in elementary, you can start teaching kids the importance of the value of even a penny, small little habits of saving. A piggy bank goes a long way, even if they don't fully understand. It's a habit that they're starting to create of, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and start saving for this thing that I want, or this toy. But more than anything, as middle school, at the end of middle school, definitely at least in high school, is a conversation that should be having. I want to push that into our education system. I know, had I known this information before I graduated, I probably would have done things a little differently. I'm pretty sure many of us, and every single time I sit down with a family, I end up hearing the words of, wow, had I known this information, what would my life look like if I would have started years ago? But there's also beauty in that, where it's like, okay, we can't undo what's already done, but you can start today and make a difference still. But if we can actually get into our school systems and start actually bringing these information to the high school students, so that way they have some type of foundation before they're actually thrown out in the real world and then left to kind of just figure things on their own, then it would make a huge difference just overall. And after all, they are going to be tomorrow's leaders. So why not prepare them properly?
I completely agree with you. Even things like, understanding that, using a credit card, for example, that you might make a purchase on something that's on sale. And you think, oh, I got this bargain, but then if you don't make the payment, then there's the interest rate. And there's that whole, the component that then at the end of the day, you're actually paying more for that, whatever you purchase, than the sale price. So I think you make a very valid point that the younger kids and high school students before college, before they, know these things, the more valuable. So you make some very great points. Tell us what you have seen or some of the consequences that families have faced when they haven't properly prepared. And I want to kind of take you to a specific area of beneficiaries when there's been a death in the family and nothing has been prepared. Can you maybe tell us a story or an experience that you yourself encountered with something like this?
Absolutely. It happens just too often, unfortunately. Most of the time we think, and it's a really sad thing to see, especially because you have your family that's worked so hard to have that home, to leave a legacy behind for the family. But unfortunately, no one actually sat down with them, or they might have actually gotten the information, but never took the action to actually do something properly in it and securing it with something as simple as a will and trust in place. And then God forbid something happens to that family. And like I said, I've seen it multiple times, unfortunately, and there's not that simple will and trust in place. And so the home then itself thinking, okay, mom and dad, this has happened and now it's going to go to the family. And then everyone's kind of scrambling around figuring like, oh no, there's a procedure that needs to be done. And then it's going back into probate. And now we're having to fight. And, we're losing a lot of the wealth that was generated when it could have easily just taken a couple of hours, sat down with a professional, made sure that everything was put in place properly. And then not only that, but being able to gear it specifically to what you want that to be doing for your family. You can still kind of control it by the grave. There's different things that you can go about it. If you're a parent, I would say the one thing that you need to be having is a will.
Yeah,
you need to definitely have that. So many people don't have that, especially parents in itself, not realizing, they've appointed a guardian in a sense because through their church, that's what they've done. But at the end of the day, the court is always going to decide what's the best for the child. And the court isn't going to go back and see, okay, this is the person that we actually put in place as our guardian in the event that we had at our church. Or this is what the mother and father wanted because these are the beliefs that they want. And so if nothing is in writing and it's actually properly notarized and gone through the steps, then really you don't have anything secured on that. And many people still kind of fall in the sense, well, I actually have it written down. I have it in a safe. It's secured. My family knows where to go. I've left it written somewhere for them. But if no one actually has sat down with a professional, how can they actually testify that that's really you? Right, how can that be proven? And so it's unfortunate to see, so many families that have suffered through that. And it's one of those things where you're grieving already as it is a loved one. And then if you would just take that time to actually sit down with a professional and let us guide you through the process, it will be much easier. It's never going to be easy to lose a loved one, but it's going to be less of a strategy, a pain to be able to grieve properly and be with the family in that sense than having to actually deal with everything else while you don't have the peace of mind for it to begin with.
So so what you're describing again could be potentially a very, very stressful situation, and again, which can affect your health. And we did focus on wills and beneficiary planning and things like that. But overall, just financial planning, money, being worried about paying bills and all of this that can cause stress. And have you seen that impact? And can you tell us a little bit about the stress and the physical aspect of not being prepared financially?
Absolutely. I mean, even still, just today, what many people are dealing with is they didn't have anything as small as an emergency fund. They secured themselves in a job and not realize that they didn't have proper protection. They weren't prepared for these things. And so we have so many people that fall into either depression, the toll that it takes on the body, it will be deteriorating, but also psychologically and mentally. And then it falls not only in impacting you personally, but every different aspect of your life, your health, your relationships with family members, with your spouse. And so that in itself creates an extra stress that, health and wealth are two things that just go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, because you can have a lot of wealth, but if you're not healthy, you're going to end up spending all your money to actually gain a little bit of that health. And then you can have all the health, but if you don't have any wealth accumulated in protection or anything like that, what good will it do also? So it's one of those things that you actually definitely want to put hand in hand. They don't go anywhere without each other. So
important balances. And we live in this world where healthcare also comes into play, and healthcare bills and things like that, planning for an unexpected illness, or if you need long-term care, some type of catastrophic event. So, all of these things that we're putting together in various aspects of financial planning, as you said, can play on your health. And so I want my listeners to understand that this is not just about talking about money, but this is talking about situations that they can create that again cause stress, which affect your immune system, which have an overall relationships. So it's just an overall concern. So if I can maybe narrow you down to the Latino community, yes. Both you and I are Latinas, and we know what it's like to grow up in a Hispanic household, and there seems to be a bit of a resistance to plan financially and to plan a will and things like that. So tell me a little bit about how you make people in that community a little bit more comfortable to have these discussions.
Absolutely. It is one of those things that you don't see too often. And like I said, that was one of the reasons why I am very passionate in what I do, because there's not enough of us that have been educated to it. So it's not second nature to us, which it should be. I honestly believe that this is a conversation that we all should be having, as if we were saying we're recommending the next great movie we saw or the restaurant. And so the way to go about it, honestly, is I just put myself in their shoes and I sit down and I let them know I'm no different than them. I am a product of an immigrant family, so I know what that's like. And so I have the pride and I voice that out, because at the end of the day, it gives you that human connection, which a lot of us are still in the need of, especially right now. And so again, when the family knows that you care for them, it makes that much easier to be able to actually help them. And every single time it's allow me and help me help you. And so opening up, I do understand, like opening up yourself and putting yourself in that position where they actually see and you build that trust along the way. It's one of the things that's a key factor. I definitely always use my own story as an example in that sense, like I mentioned. And then also just letting them know my goal ultimately is here to empower them and educate them and help them, and not just them, but for generations to come. So I want them to actually say, you know what, I want their grandchildren to say, this is the person that came into our household that my grandparents trusted, and they made a difference and an impact. And because of them, our generation is very different from what it could have been. So that's something that I very much strive for. And I think overall in the Latin community, when you actually have somebody in Hispanics in general, when you have that trust and that welcoming, it's in our culture,
Yes.
and you've already kind of had
Your family.
then
Your
it's a
family.
lot easier. Exactly.
Yes.
It really, really is.
So with that same thought in mind, with the trust in your family, I know in our previous conversations, you mentioned that your services can actually also help even people that are undocumented. Can you tell us, if you're okay with that, can you tell us, a little bit about that and any particular experience that you did have with, whether it's a family or an individual that was in that position, and how you helped them through that?
Absolutely. Yes. So we are actually able, I do service some products that we can help. If you have an ITIN, then you're still able to get the proper protection. And again, everything will be more of a map for each family in itself. So each situation is going to be a little different. But in the case of it, even I willfully will actually go and take that step beyond, and those, even if they don't have an ITIN, not properly can I actually legally give them the advice and put them in place of protection that they don't have, but I can still educate them in what's available, things that they have control of, things of the importance of making sure that there's that emergency fund that we talked about, making little changes, making sure that they don't fall into debt, that they don't fall into the bad habits that are actually going to have a potential negative impact for them on the long term. And so I break all of that down and helping everybody, with or without your being able to be documented or not. In the sense of the education, I always take that route. And then, of course, if there's a product that I can legally advise in, with them having an actual ITIN, then I go into performing and helping the family get that protection that way.
For our listeners who don't know what an ITIN is, can you briefly give us a description of what that is?
Yes. So basically is you don't have a social security number, but you are be here in the United States working, and you're paying your taxes. And so that's, you usually will able to actually service with that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So as we get a little bit to the close of the show, I think an important aspect of all of this is that we have a lot of listeners today that are living paycheck to paycheck, that've been affected by the pandemic, that, they're just trying to survive. How do you even begin to have a conversation with someone who, they have multiple jobs? Here in LA County, it's a very, very expensive place to live. The cost of living. How can you implement a strategy when you're just trying to, again, survive every day? Can you share some advice on that?
Absolutely. So what we actually have, and like I said, the services that I provide are complimentary. So we have a financial needs analysis that you can actually take advantage of. And there we actually sit down and look at everything of your expenses. And my goal isn't to actually come in and tell you how to live your life. But of course, I'm going to go ahead and advise. And we look at everything as a whole. And we dump it all out, and we look and see, like, okay, where exactly are your goals? What are you doing today that are helping you reach those goals? And where can we actually minimize and tweak? And of course, where can we walk in and actually start to eliminate some of that debt? So what I do is actually sit down and put a strategy and a plan together for them, where we can actually minimize some of their debt, pretty much eliminate the debt, minimize the taxes, and then from that, generate what's the wealth that's left over from those things that we eliminated in the taxes and the debt. We now put them towards the things that they're actually wanting to have, whether it be proper protection of life insurance, whether it's a retirement plan or education funding for the kids. Then we can allocate in that sense. And there's always the opportunity to be able to help a family, but more than anything, it's the opportunity to sit down and have an actual financial needs analysis that's done specifically for your family, your goals. And it's, like I said, the testimony of a roadmap for you to actually be able to achieve your goals in that sense. So there's definitely that opportunity. And I extend it, of course, to all the listeners to be able to contact and I'll more than happily be able to sit down with each and every single one of you to help you make sure that you achieve that.
So Lidia, if our listeners would like to go through a financial analysis with you, how can they reach you and how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So they can contact me directly. My email address is cortezlidia.rfm. So that's Robert Frank Mary @gmail.com. They can call me directly at 760-297-6867. And then, of course, also online, they can reach me at linktr.ee/Lidia Cortes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing such important information with us today and for coming on to our show. Thanks, Lidia.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be able to be here.
Have a great day. Support for this podcast comes from Hasty Storytelling. Hasty Storytelling is a creative agency that specializes in production, brand strategy, and live streaming solutions. For more information, visit us at hastystorytelling.com. Health Journeys is produced by Victoria Bilionis and executive producers Dennis Lovelace and Greg Hasty. Finally, if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, tell a friend, and visit us at hastystorytelling.com.